Hey, it's Craig here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I shot this video a couple days ago on the weekend, and it was so windy that I could not use the audio from the video, so I thought I would salvage the footage and do a voiceover. So the purpose of the video, and I've cut a lot of it out because I was just like standing in front of the camera talking, so some people will be happy that I'm not doing that, I guess. I'm talking about how to peel the bark off a log using 3 different ways, and this first way is using an axe here. And what I'm explaining here is to have the axe have the log between your body and the axe so that it really can't go into your leg, and to always be very cognizant of where your leg is and what you're doing with the axe, and to almost like rehearse the stroke of the axe so you know where it's going to go. And for doing this, you want a very sharp axe, and you can use a longer axe, but I find a shorter axe is the way to go. But you want to make sure it's really good and sharp. And there's lots of videos on YouTube on how to sharpen an axe and keep an axe sharp. Of course, if enough people ask, I will get around to doing a video on how I sharpen my axes. You don't need any fancy gear, and it doesn't take much time. And you don't need to spend a lot of money on an axe either. This was a $20 axe. Yeah, I find, as I just did there, it helps to keep the log under control and more well behaved. If you put I basically got it propped up on one stump, and on the other end I've got a stump over the bottom of the log. And I'm explaining right here that if you have your hands too close together, you don't have good control. It's better to have one hand low and one hand high, or one hand low and one hand at the middle of the axe. It really depends on you and where you feel like you've got the most control. When you're swinging an axe, you want to have both hands low if you want to get any real power. But when you're doing sort of finer work like this, you want one hand up closer near the head to get that ultimate control. So yeah, that's the general idea for doing that. And then all you got to do, I think I changed the camera angle a bit here, is just adjust the log to a different position so that you can do the second part. I mean, you're basically constantly adjusting how you're holding the log in place and using different techniques as you go. And I'm going to go, as the video progresses, I'm going to show you a number of different techniques for holding a log in place. This is just one. It's good for the axe because you kind of need 2 hands on the axe, right? And because of the way you have to stand when you're using the axe, you really need some sort of improvised vise. And I've got other videos. I'll put links at the end on other ways to make improvised vices for axes. And the other thing I didn't show, it was off camera, but before I tried to, these are spruce logs, or spruce poles, is that I made sure I cut the branches off flush with the side of the, of the trunk of that tree. These were all dead standing trees. The reason I'm doing all this peeling is because I'm going to increase the area of the fenced part of my garden. It's probably too late in the year to do any work on that now, because since the filming of this video, now the ground, as I'm recording this today, looking out my office window, it is completely white outside and the ground is frozen and it's -9 Celsius. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing much pounding too many fence posts in. But anyway, that's how you finish it off on the stump, making sure you know where your legs are. And there's one down. 2 more to go. I do 3 different logs using 3 different tools. So for this here log, you can see me talking like an idiot, and that's the sound was horrendous. Anyway, so I got a long knife, right? Like someone might call that like a combat knife or whatever. I really don't know. I got this knife at a yard sale for like $1 or something like that. And to me, I wouldn't be surprised if this was just a piece of spring steel that someone turned into a knife, some farmer or something. Because basically, I got it out in the boonies at some, farmhouse. They were just selling everything off. But okay, so I've driven the axe in there. You don't have to use an axe. You can use a nail or anything, or even a wedge of wood if you've got a stump. You can pound a wedge into a stump. So I put that in just to keep the post that I'm working on from rolling off the left side of the log. So at least I've got that under control. And here I am. I'm sort of sitting, half crouching, half sitting. So I'm using my bum. I sort of switch positions because I'm 47, so sometimes I'm sitting on my bum, sometimes I got it trapped under my thigh, and so on and so forth. And I'm using the knife and holding it this way. And yes, you're pulling towards yourself, but your elbows are going to hit your using your elbows almost like a gauge so you're safe. Your elbows are going to hit your body before the knife is close enough to your body to do any damage. So you notice how my elbow is coming down and hitting my thigh, or it's hitting my chest, and so on and so forth. So you should always have one elbow, the way you've positioned your body, so that one of your elbows is going to hit your body before the knife gets close. And that way you're you know, I don't know if you're 100% safe, but you're pretty darn safe. I've never cut myself doing this. You notice I've got a glove on each hand. I've done this. People that watch all my videos have seen me do stupid stuff where I do this without gloves. But it's good to have a pair of gloves on. But you're really not squeezing the sharp part of the blade. You're pushing down on the top of the blade, which is not sharp, which one more reason why you'd never want a two-sided, you know, a knife with both sides sharpened. That doesn't make any sense at all. Just a useless kind of knife. You'd think it'd be twice as good because both sides are sharpened, but you can't grab the end of it like I'm doing right now and use it in various ways like a tool, right? So anyway, as we're working along here, and you know, when you've got it propped on a stump like this, you can only really do half of it like that. Now, I could turn it around and sit on the part I've peeled, but that really makes a mess of your pants. Sitting on a peel, I wouldn't do this. For anyone that's going to do this, I would not use a pair of pants that are very precious to you, because it tends to make a stain on the pants, and the stain is not attractive. Let's put it that way. Anyway, you can see here what I'm doing is I've got it sort of in my shoulder, near my neck, and I'm sort of holding on to it like that. So that's just one more way to stabilize the log while you're working it. Now I'm using another technique where I've got it under my left arm, and I've got the knife on the log, but the log is between my boot and the knife, right? So you know, I'm safe, I guess. This is probably not the safest way to do it, but I've done this lots of times. The log is between the knife and me. I'm holding it almost like between my belly, or the side of my belly, and my thigh. So I'm using my torso like an arm, I guess. So it works, but I mean, it just works for that stretch of the log. Every part of the log, the bottom, the middle, the end, there's different ways to hold it to get at that, right? You can't hold it one way the whole time. And just like with the axe, for the very end here, I just hold it on the stump and sort of just whack at it with the knife. You might think, watching me here, you could do the whole log by whacking at it with the knife like this, but I think you'll find that your forearm will burn out unless you're really young and really invincible. It looks like it's quick, but it's because I'm only taking the bark off a 6-inch section, but I'm using a lot of energy and a lot of force with the knife to do it that way. The other ways I was doing it are just more, they don't use as much energy, so you can, you know, you don't burn your muscles out doing it. So that's using a knife to do it, you know, sort of larger 6-inch blade type knife. And here I've got the almost like the purpose-built tool. This is a Pioneer sort of tool. I've got this at an old yard sale for maybe $5 or $10. I can't remember exactly, but this is a draw knife. And you might think of by looking at it, the draw knife has one side that's flat and one side that's rounded. And you might think that you want the flat side down against the log, but you actually want the rounded part. There's sort of a part with a bevel to it. You want the rounded part against the log and the flat part facing up. That's what I'm talking about there with my finger. Okay, so a flat side. Maybe there's certain operations you want the flat side down, but for doing this and for shaping wood and for a lot of various things, it's counterintuitive, I know, but you want the flat side up and the round side down, and that gives you the control you want, and it'll just behave better for you if you do it that way. And of course, this tool, the knife, the axe, everything must be sharp. The sharper everything is, the better. Now, one more tip. I've cut these fence posts off so they're sort of a square, the way I worked it with the axe. It's the easiest. You might be inclined to make it into a perfect circle, but it's way easier to square it off like this. But another advantage is that when you've got the axe, or when you've got the post, the fence post, laying on a stump like this, it's dimensional now. It's got a side, right? So it'll keep from rolling around to some extent because you've made 4 planes on the end, right? I mean, it'll still move around a little bit, right? But you're sitting on it, you're controlling it. But just by giving it 4 sides with the axe, which is the quickest way to make a point anyway, you're also getting the added advantage of it being a little bit more stable while you're working with a draw knife. Now, of all the things I've used here, I would say the most efficient way to peel a log is to use a draw knife with a proper vise. So, I find, really the axe is a great way to go for doing it this way, because it seems to need the least stability. The knife's okay. I find the draw knife works using it this way, but it would work so much better if it was in a proper vise. I found I could not use the draw knife properly by using my body and all this sort of stuff as a vise. I can't quite explain it, because you'd think the draw knife would be an improvement over just a big big knife, like a survival knife. What do you want to call that thing? I wouldn't call it a survivor knife, but just like a large knife sort of thing, right? Almost like a large garden knife. I actually found that to work better than the draw knife in this instance. But if you've got a proper vise setup and a proper setup, the draw knife it's a purpose-built tool. It's for shaping wood. And if you think about the bark layer as basically a really flimsy kind of wood, once you get going, you can really peel a lot of bark off a log using a draw knife. If I had to do this all day, I would use a draw knife. It also has the ergonomics. It's got the handles on a certain way, and it just cooperates with you. So that's one more reason you want to use a draw knife. But the reason I did this video using different techniques was just to show people that you don't have to have a draw knife. You might see videos or YouTube videos where guys are using this Pioneer tool or that tool or whatever. And I'm not making this up. My original intention when I was making this video was to show how much better and faster the draw knife was. But in fact, I found it a little bit more difficult. And I use it fairly often. It's just because I don't have a proper vise and I'm not set up for it properly. If you have everything set up just right, the draw knife can be way faster. But since I only had time to do 3 of these posts this afternoon, so there was no point in setting up some sort of proper operation. And of course, you get a knot like I just did there, where it's just a knot that will not cooperate. You gotta knock that off with the axe. So, to summarize again, you don't need fancy, expensive tools, right? You can get away with some really basic tools, especially if you're not doing it on a large scale. I need, maybe 30 of these. And every time I get a spare half hour or an hour, I'll go out in the woods behind my house, find a dead tree, cut it down. And I don't know if I'll be able to get all the posts I need, but man, I'm gonna try. There's me falling off the end. It's not cooperating. It's also a lot easier when you're using the draw knife if the tree is sort of upside down. Right now I'm going from the top. I'm drawing from the top to the bottom of the tree, and the tree does not cooperate as well when you're drawing from the top to the bottom. Yeah, I can even turn around there. So, but I just had to, because that's really the only way to work this thing. You can't, the draw knife peels one way, whereas the axe and the knife are more versatile. But when you have everything set up right, the draw knife peels exquisitely and very quickly and very well. But when you're having to use these sort of rough and ready, improvised conditions, the draw knife is a little bit out of its element, although it will work, right? And it would take a little bit more time to set up some sort of jig or some sort of rig or some sort of improvised vise, rather than just using your body as a vise. The draw knife will pay off dividends over the long run. Anyway, there's one more post peeled using the draw knife. So, axe, draw knife, they all work. Use what you got. Be safe. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.